Hi, I'm Craig Bell.
And I'm John Perkins.
Today, John 3:16 with a different twist. That's straight ahead on Take 5.
Food for the soul, helping you to thrive. 5 minutes to renew your mind. Take 5.
A young orphan boy was selling newspapers on a cold winter night on a busy street corner in a big city. It was raining and spitting snow. The wind was blowing. As he stood there selling newspapers, a kind old gentleman stopped to buy a newspaper from him that night. The young boy looked at the man and said, "Sir, would you happen to know of any place that a young boy who has nowhere to go tonight could find a place to sleep?" The kind old man smiled down at him and said, "Yes, son, I do happen to know of a place like that. If you go up the street a block and then turn left, you'll find a big 2-story house there on the right. Go up on the porch, knock on the door, and when the lady answers, just tell her John 3:16 and she'll let you in." Well, the little boy was excited to try that and ran up the street, found the house that the man had described. He went up on the big front porch, and with a timid knock, he knocked on the door. A kind old lady came to the door and opened it, and she smiled down at him and said, "Yes." The little boy mustered all the courage he could and looked up at her and said, "John 3:16. The lady smiled even bigger and opened the door wide and said, "Well, come on in, son." And she ushered him into a warm, inviting room. The fireplace was blazing. The chairs looked inviting. She said, "Son, sit down here in the chair by the fire and warm up a little bit while I finish fixing up some dinner." He sat there in a big plush chair and looked around that fine room with the warm fire, and he thought to himself, "Boy, John 3:16, I don't understand it, but it sure makes a cold boy warm." It wasn't too long till she came back into the room and said, "Supper's ready, son," and invited him into the next room. There he found a table spread with the fixings like he'd never seen. She had fixed a meal that was fit for a king. She invited him to sit down and eat, and he sat down and began to eat. And as he filled his belly with that wonderful food, he looked around and he thought to himself, "Boy, John 3:16, I don't understand it, but it sure makes a hungry boy full." After they had eaten all they could hold, she said, "Son, I've drew a bath for you upstairs so you can have a hot bath." She took him upstairs to a bathtub that was full of bubbles, warm and inviting. And as he sank into the water, he thought to himself about the day and about John 3:16. And he began to think, John 3:16, boy, I don't understand it, but it sure makes a dirty boy clean. After he got out of the tub, he saw some bedclothes that she had laid out for him to put on, and he took off his old tattered, ratty clothes, left them in a pile, and put on the new bedclothes, and got underneath the covers. And as he got ready to fall asleep, she came into the room, tucked him in, told him good night. And as he was drifting off to sleep, he thought, John 3:16, boy, I don't understand it, but it sure does make a tired boy rested. The next morning the sun rose and he came downstairs, had some breakfast, and went back to that big living room to sit in that big oversized chair again. When she came in and sat beside him and said, "Son, do you understand what John 3:16 is all about?" He said, "No, ma'am, I don't." And she began to tell him the story of John 3:16. And that day she led him to Jesus Christ. He prayed the prayer and invited Jesus to become his Lord and Savior. And he thought, John 3:16, wow, it sure makes a sad boy happy. Friends, could I confess to you that I don't understand John 3:16 either? With all of our knowledge that we have in our day and age, we try to be so smart, but the depth of that verse is so far beyond our understanding. That God of the universe would love the world, you and me, so much that he would give his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. That's the best news you'll hear all day, friends. John 3:16. Boy, I don't understand it, but it sure makes a lost man found.
Forgot to